Ready-made maths YouTube training videos. Teacher and teaching assistant mathematics training. This week is Master It in Place Value. We're now up to day 3. We've got 2 videos today. One is a longer standard size video, part 1, which is looking at visual, deeper understanding of 2-digit numbers. There's also an additional video, a much shorter video that goes alongside this, where we're going to be looking at the number frame and how the number grid, and how that can be used to develop 2 digits and beyond mathematical understanding. Just thought it was worth just running through the whole program for the week, just to reinforce what we've done earlier in the week. We started off the week with real place value for 4-digit numbers, where we've built up a real picture of what 4-digit numbers look like, starting with the ones. Day 2, we look much more specifically at ones, tens and hundreds in numbers with 4 digits and 3 digits and 2 digits as well. Today's video is about 2-digit numbers. It's about looking deeper into 2-digit numbers, not just taking 34 as 30 and 4, and not just taking 80 as 8 tens and 40 as 4 tens. It's about really getting to grips with the ones value of numbers today. We're going to really focus on what, every single number has a ones value and what that is. We're also going to look at how numbers can be briefly partitioned in different ways, which is something we'll be looking at in a bit more depth later in the week. There is a second video, as I mentioned today, a much shorter one that takes you into looking at the place value number grid, which kind of sets us up for day 4. On day 4, we'll be looking at how to use base 10 and how to set things out in 5 and a bit. And the final day is a kind of a greater depth day where we're looking at partitioning in different ways, and we're also going to explore a little bit about decimal place value as well. So please join me for the week, and I hope you find the videos really helpful.
Hello and welcome to day 3 of this week's Ready-Made Mathematics YouTube training videos. What we've been focusing on this week is place value, in particular using a wide range of mathematical resources to allow children in primary school to visualise the mathematics first. As with pretty much all of mathematics, and certainly as part of mastery, one of the key things is that children can see the numbers. They've got to be able to see them in order to understand them. They've got to be able to play with them and manipulate them. It's concrete first, pictorial second, and abstract last. So we've got a picture and an understanding before we start to write things down. We don't just want to be presenting children with numerals on a board or on a piece of paper. Now, we've looked at other resources over the course of the week. What we're going to specifically focus on today is we're going to drop back a little bit more into Key Stage 1. We've kind of looked at Year 3 and 4 mainly for the first 2 days. We started to move back to Key Stage 1 at the end of yesterday, and what we're going to be looking now is how to use different types of apparatus to really understand ones. What are ones all about? And obviously tens as part of that. Rather than starting with the tens and ones, let's look at a ones number and put the 2 things together. Now, we're going to be looking at that through, initially, the abacus. I've got 3 Slavonic abacuses here. This is the fabacus, the large fabacus. I'll let you decide what different numbers that's showing on there. I've then got this particular resource, which is the Fabacus Mini, which is probably my favourite out of the 3 different ones. It's really nice as a teacher tool. It's not too heavy, and I use this in class an awful lot. And thirdly, we have the children's Slavonic abacus. Again, these are all showing different numbers, so I do pause the video whenever you feel like it, and have a look at the numbers that are being made as well. In addition to the abacus, there's other resources on the table that we're going to be looking at throughout this session. The first one is this, which we're going to very briefly look at towards the end of this session. That's base 10. You'll see the base 10 there on number tiles. We're going to be doing a lot more work on base 10 tomorrow because, as I say, that's my main resource for place value, but there's definitely things that come before. So that's what we're going to be looking at towards the end of this session and a lot of tomorrow. You'll also see egg boxes, which we have obviously used over the past couple of days really successfully. So we'll be having, maybe a brief look, a little bit more depth at how egg boxes are used. And finally, moving over to the other side, Numicon. Again, if we are looking at mathematics through apparatus, Numicon is a really powerful one. It's kind of somewhere in between the egg box image, which we looked at yesterday, and the base 10 image that we're looking at tomorrow. It definitely shows tens, but it shows a little bit more about the 10 than a 10 piece does in base 10. And it also shows ones, but it shows them as a whole number. So again, Numicon is a really nice resource, almost as a bridge or as an additional resource to support place value understanding. So what we're going to be doing today is basically taking a range of different apparatus. We're going to be taking the abacuses, we're going to be taking the Numicon, we'll kind of refer back to the egg boxes that we've looked at previously, and we're going to be looking at base 10 towards the end. By the end of tomorrow, what I hope we've seen is basically 4 days of really, really powerful mathematical resources that will support children's mathematical understanding. That should allow us then to take certain ones of those resources and go to some depth on them. Now, moving over to the abacus. I've talked about how kind of flexible and beneficial the egg boxes are as a really nice resource for children to use. I think as a teacher, probably my favourite resource of all time for looking at numbers 1 to 100 really quickly and being able to manipulate numbers is the Slavonic abacus. If you've never seen the Slavonic abacus before, it's kind of an Eastern European counting frame. There is loads of research online on how to use Slavonic abacuses, and I will be including some elements of that research in the materials that go alongside these training videos. I deliberately don't include too much research in the actual presentations simply because there isn't enough time, but you will find that in the Dropbox folder. There'll be a few articles on where the Slavonic abacus comes from, how it's been developed, and how it's a really, really powerful way of letting children see and visualize numbers up to 100. Let's briefly look at how the abacus can be used. I will be publishing over the next couple of weeks some really short little mini videos on how to use the abacus. Quite a few people have contacted me in the past couple of weeks asking about the abacus. So what I will be doing is just putting lots of little mini videos making those available very soon on different ways of using it. But as a starting point, just for place value, I'll just show you really quickly. If we count 1, 2, 3, make a nice sound as well, 4, 5, 6, 7. At this point, straight away, something we're going to be discussing in the next session is we can see that 7 as 5 and 2. We can see straight away it's 5 and a bit. Exactly like in a tens frame, we're seeing that image of 5 and a bit, which is really powerful early years to year 1 place value understanding. Eventually, we get to number 9. We know that number 9 is 1 less than 10, which we can see here. And as soon as I have my final one, we get to 10. We can now clearly see 1 10. We can clearly see 10 ones. And actually, because of the colour coordination on there, we can also see 2 5s, which is a real powerful benefit of something extra that the abacus allows you, compared to a standard abacus, which just gives you 10 ones and 1 10. It's got no colour coordination or colour scheme, so you can't see any other numbers. Moving from 10 then, where do we go next? Well, we can have obviously counting ones, 11, 12, 13. Superb for place value. What can we now see? We can see 1 10 and 3 ones, 13 ones. I'll come back to that in a second because we're going to go into all the different 2-digit numbers in a second. Let's just keep for the time being with tens. We get to that point, what can we now see? 2 10s, 20 ones, exactly like we saw with the egg boxes. And we can also see 4 5s. What can we see now? 10, 20, 30. We've got 3 10s, we've got 30 ones. The more I use these, the more I started to develop these ideas of 10s going down like that, 1s going across like this. Moving to the next one. We've got 4 10s, we've got 40 ones, we've got 5 10s, we've got 50 ones. So we've got 5 10s and 50 ones. We're now halfway up the abacus. Let's see what other numbers we get from there. It's at this point we reach the second important element of the Slavonic abacus, the colour change again. Now this, at first glance, actually I tend to find adults have more issues with this than children. Children just kind of accept it, and they just kind of, after a couple of minutes of looking, it almost just gels with children when they see this image, especially if you started off looking at 6 as being 5 and 1. What we can now see is the colour changes again halfway down the abacus. Why? Because again, it's the idea of 5 and a bit. So we can see 50 and 10 is 60. What we can now see are 7 10s, and we know it's 7 10s. We don't need to look at the entire abacus, we just look at the number of 10s. 5, 6, 7. 7 10s must be 71s. 8 10s, 81s. 9 10s, 91s. And 10 10s, 101s. Now I know I've been through that very quickly. That's just to show you the very, very basis of how this abacus can be used, just to count in 10s and to reference it to 1s. Again, by the time children are in year 2, if they've been using this resource in year 1, or if they've been using the children's versions, which are absolutely superb, which you can see here, they'll be used to this, and by the time they're in year 2, this will be second nature. They'll be straight away making the numbers. There's 40, it's 4 tens, it's 41s, it's also 4 8 5s. Play, so give them a whole lesson on playing with abacuses, just to get used to manipulating them, and using them. These are not expensive, the small ones. I get these from a company called AutoPress. I think they're about £12.50. They're not expensive at all. Really, really good value. The large abacuses, this is called a Fabacus, a brilliant name, the Fabacus. This comes from a company, it's www.thefabacus.co.uk. These are obviously massive teacher ones. I think they're around about £130. There's also, bring this over here, as I mentioned in previous training videos, this is the one I tend to use the most actually in classes. This is the Fabacus Mini. This is a scaled down version of this. I think these are about £60–70. They are quite expensive, but they are really, really brilliant. I use these all the time. And as a whole class demonstration tool, this tends to be easier for me when I'm going into different classes. It allows me to make the numbers really quick. But let's stick to the main focus of what we're looking at today, which is let's look at some numbers. So we've seen all the numbers up to 100 in multiples of 10. What else can we do? Well, the great thing about the abacus is we don't always need to start back from scratch. We don't need to make the numbers from that side. We can make the numbers from this side. Let's have a look. 10, 20, 30, 7. The number is 37. 3 tens and 7 ones. 3 tens and 7 ones, 37 ones. I'm going to pause the image on the next number, and I'm going to ask you to look at the number and tell me what you can see about that number. And let's go beyond just tens and ones. Let's look at everything we can see, place value wise, about the number that we can make. So let's just go a little bit further. So I'll just go to there, and in fact, no, actually go back a little bit. I'm going to go to that number there. So I'd like you to look at this number, and first of all, tell me what the number is, and then can you find me 5 or 6 things that you know about this number just by looking at the abacus. Anyone who's watched the introductory video from about 3 or 4 weeks ago will see a kind of variation on this, but pause the video, quick look, tell me about the number. Let's see all the many different things we could have seen about this number. The first, and what I hope we want to get straight away, 2 tens and 6, 2 tens and 6 ones. Therefore the number is 26. I will probably use an arrow cards here to show the 20 and the 6 and put those together as well, so we can see this is 20, this is 6, the number is 26, 2 tens and 6 ones, 26 ones. Keep saying that over again, 2 tens and 6 ones, 26 ones, 2 tens and 6 ones, 26 ones. What else can I see? Well, I can also see the number of 5s. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 5s, that's 25, and 1 makes 26. So by year 2, children can certainly be looking at the number of 5s. Is there anything else I can see? Well, I can also see the number over here. So I can get that idea. Well, I've got 26, I need another 4 to make 30. Now, we looked at that in the first week's work when we were looking at number bonds. We looked at using the abacus to get children to see number bonds. We did a specific activity on that in the second week as well. So if you do look at any of the early training videos, there's loads of good stuff on using the abacus for number bonds work. So 26 and 4 is 30. What you can also see here is the other numbers up to 50. Here's 26 and here is 24. If I put the 26 with the 24, that will get me to 50. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily place value. It's using other things that we know about the number. If I add 24 to it, I make 50. And last but not least, I can also see 50, 60, 74 that will get me to 100. So that isn't last but not least. There's many other things we can see. Some children look at it vertically. And I've had some lovely answers from children who say, well, I can see a 15 here and an 11 here. I've seen many year 2 children have talked about seeing the numbers that way, just because of the colours. You know, you might initially intended to see the numbers going as kind of lines of 10, but some children immediately fixate on the colours and see an array. There's 15 and there's 11. And to be honest, it's like a little tens frame. There's a tens frame, there's another, and there's a 6. So you can see 10, 26, or you can see 15 and 11. As the numbers get bigger, you know, if you get a number like that, you can see 38, but you can also see 20 and 18. So there's lots of other things we can see as well. So I won't use show any more activities with the abacus, But just have this resource ready for all. If you know, even if you only are able to get a small one that you can use with the children, have it available so you can just make numbers really quick. Let's have a look. What's this number? First principles: 4 tens and 3 ones, 43 ones. What's this number? 6 tens and 2 ones, 62 ones. What's this number? 7 tens and 5 ones, 75 ones. What's that number? 9 tens and 8 ones, 98 ones. Add my other two to get me to 100. It's a quick activity. It can be done for 2 minutes a day for several days until the children become really confident in talking about those numbers. Kind of going back a bit to something we looked at just earlier on within this video, looking at Numicon. I've actually taken a Numicon baseboard and just filled it with 10 pieces. That takes us back to, well, what do you notice? What do you notice? Just tell me something about what you can see. We discussed this earlier with the egg boxes, and we also discussed with the base 10 as well. Have a look at that particular image. Just focus on that for a second, really quickly, pause the video, what can you see? I think the first thing that children do see is that it's tens. If they're used to using Numicon and they've been using them at the start of year one, and or in early years, and they're used to that being a tens piece, straight away we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or hopefully they'll recognise there's 5 tens and there's another 5 tens. 5 tens and 5 tens, that's 10 tens. Therefore, what must the board be worth? The board must be worth 100. If the board's worth 100 and it's got 10 tens, interestingly, individually, you cannot actually see, even better when you actually hold the Numicon piece up, that definitely has got 10 circles in there, or 10 ones. Therefore, that board must be worth 100, 10 tens, or 100 ones. Also, we can see 50 and 50. So it's again, greater depth. What else can you see? Well, there's 50 there, and there's 50 there. What else can you see? 20 and 20 and 20 and 20 and 20. Other children, well, it's 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. But each of these are worth 10. So 2 tens, 4 tens, 6 tens, 8 tens, 10 tens. 10 tens is 100. 5 20s is 100. 2 50s makes 100. You can see the amount, the amount of things we can do. Again, just removing 2 of the tens. We'll be talking about 5 and a bit tomorrow. It's now a 5 and a bit image, exactly like on the abacus. We can see 80 and another 20. So will get me to 100. 8 tens and 2 tens make 100. 80 ones and 20 ones make 100. Always emphasize the ones, emphasize the tens, emphasize the amount. Just use that mathematical language until it just becomes second nature for the children, but also second nature for yourself as well. The more you can do it, the more they'll do it. I've now just created a couple of numbers with the Numicon. Again, very similar to what we just did with the abacus. Doesn't need to be on a baseboard. These numbers can just be on a table. Have a look at them. We're going to pause the video. Again, if you've got somebody with you, have a talk to them. Can you see something about the numbers and can they tell you something else? And how does the number develop as it goes over 50? Is there more we can say about it? Is it a little bit easier to see other things about the numbers? Just anything at all you can tell me. Let's have a look. Let's just start with the first number that we can see here. I'm hoping by the time the children are used to this and we're used to using it, we'll look at the number and go, oh, it's 27. How do you know it's 27? First principles, it's 2 tens and 7 ones. If it's 2 tens and 7 ones, what must it also have? 27 ones. So 2 tens and 7 ones, 27 ones. Can you see anything else about the number? Well, definitely I can see this little space here. If I was to get a Numicon 3 piece that would drop over the top of it, that would show me, well, I need 3 more to make 30. Interestingly enough, I'll just borrow 2 from over here just for a second. I also need 23 to make 50. I also need 50, 60, 73 to make 100. Now, most children probably wouldn't tell you that initially, but if you encourage them and reason and do this activity a lot, you'll soon see them start to, explore. But let's take the resources we've got and just move them. What else? No. Just now, what do I know about 27 now? It's 17 and 10. Simple. What else do I know about 27? It's 10 and 10 and 7. Again, I'm not going to go into replacing the 7 with other numbers, which I could do for even more depth, just keeping the pieces that we've got and moving them around. That's why I think the next piece of Numicon, the next number, gives us even more scope. What's the first thing we see? 6 tens. How do I know it's 6 tens? It's that 5 and a bit image again. 50, 60, 6 tens and a 4. So 6 tens and a 4, or 6 tens and 4 ones, 64 ones. That number must be 64. What else do I know about it? Well, straight away, even without doing any particular movement around, I can tell you that 64 is 50 and 14. Again, for year 2, really powerful. We're going to be looking at, on the final day this week, at partitioning numbers in different ways. Well, this is a perfect activity to show that. 64 is 60 and 4, but it's also 50 and 14. What else do I know? It's 6 away from 70. Therefore, it must be 10, 20, 36 away from 100. They're just things that you can see just by looking at the baseboard. Without the baseboard, that might not be quite as clear. But again, let's just move things around a little bit. I'll tell you what, let's just put those over here. And again, we're now into kind of Friday's activity. We now know that 64 is 40 and 24. So I won't spend too much time on that because we are moving on to that later in the week. So let's have a look at the number 27 in lots and lots of different ways. This should hopefully emphasise all the things we've been looking at over the course of this session, and almost moving hierarchically as well. You can see there the numeral 27, which is often how we see the number written. The children just see a 2 and a 7. We've got to give that 27 meaning. If you look in the bottom of that particular bottom left-hand corner of the reasoning card, you will see that there is a base 10 image, which is the 2 tens and 7 ones, which will also show you 3 less than 30. But that's not really where we want to start. That's where we want to end up. We want to start with something like tens frames. Again, what does that show me? Well, that definitely shows me 2 tens and 7 ones, 27 ones, and 3 more will make 30, along with many other things that we've discussed earlier on. Let's move on. What we're looking at now is the abacus, the Slavonic abacus. I can see on the abacus, if I just home in there, I can see 2 tens and 7 ones, 27 ones. The 5s are certainly clearer there, the 5 5s and a 2. But again, if we go back to that previous image, there are definitely 2, 4, 5 5s and a 2 on there as well. I think those images are superb for giving you greater depth or more understanding of smaller numbers. We then move on to the Numicon, and it's less 2 tens and 7 ones now, it's more 2 tens and 7. There are 7 ones within that 7, as we can see, and there are 10 ones within each of the tens, but that looks more like 2 tens and a 7 to give us 27. Now, as we move then onto the image that actually we started the whole day with, but we haven't really used since then, the base 10. As I mentioned at the start, base 10 is probably the better resource overall for place value, but I think we need to secure that real understanding of ones before we start to use base 10 too regularly. What can I see there? I can see 2 tens and 7 ones. Definitely 2 tens. There are the ones that are within there, but it's much more clear now that we're looking at tens and ones. And underneath that is the resource that we often use later in year 3 and in year 4. What we can now see are 2 tens and 7 ones with place value counters, where you now can no longer see what the 10 is worth. You have to know what the 10 is worth before you start using that resource. So we need to know that 10 is worth 10 ones. And then we can exchange 10 of the red ones for 1 of the yellow 10s. As I move over, we now go to the resource that was probably used very, very effectively by the National Numeracy Strategy to show a different type of place value, really, what was then called partitioning, which was basically that 27 is 20 and 7. That definitely is partitioning, absolutely. We've partitioned the 27 into 20 and 7, but there's a lot more to partitioning than that. That's just basically a numerical, where you're looking at the 2 numerals that make up the numeral 27. So we've got a 20 and we've got a 7, together makes 27. That's because there's the 2 tens that are represented by the 20, which I'm going to bring over here. So the 2 tens are represented by the 20, and that 7 is what represents the 7 ones. So whichever image I'm using, again, I could do exactly the same thing with that. I could take those over here. They're a little bit big for the Numicon, but you've got the 20 and the 7, which altogether gives us the number 27. So what I've tried to show there is just a range of different resources. What's the best resource to use for place value? Well, the answer to that is all of them. The more resources we can use, the better. But the main aim of this is to show that we need to start with something that's very one based build it up until eventually we are at base 10. Don't start off with base 10 and then go the other way. Thanks so much for joining me for day 3 of the place value activities. I hope what you've been able to see today is how powerful so many different resources are in order to give the children that real secure understanding of the ones value of 2-digit numbers and developing it into a tens and ones value. We're going to, well, in fact, interestingly, tomorrow we're going to almost scale it backwards again. Seems like this week we've started off at kind of year 3, 4. We've gone backwards and developed and looked at the actual smaller skills that build up. Tomorrow we're going to go and look at 5 and a bit and how 5 and a bit can be developed, and then we're going to also look at the way that numbers can be laid out effectively, which we've touched on previously in mental calculation. And then finally we're going to look at partitioning in different ways, which is an absolutely superb skill that children can develop in Key Stage 1 and use to a very high level for calculation purposes in Key Stage 2 and certainly in Upper Key Stage 2. We're also going to take the opportunity to look at some decimal work as well. So thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow for day 4.
That's it for video 1. Hope you enjoyed the material today and found the visuals really powerful and really useful. Please take a look at the accompanying video if you get the time, because it will give a little bit of a direct input towards tomorrow, and it will also kind of extend the mathematics that we've done today. That video is looking at the number grid, but a visual version of a number grid. So our number grid, or 100 square as we often see it, can be set out to look a lot more visual and build in a lot more understanding. Thank you very much, and I shall see you tomorrow for day 4.